Hi friends, it's Sarah from rufflesandrainboots.com, and today we're making 3 scrap busting gnomes with the 3 easiest hats ever. If you would like to make them with me, just boop, stick around. As always, please like this video so I know you're here crafting with me. Now again, we're going to make 3 different gnomes, but I'm going to start with this one. He is a very small base and a very tall hat, and that makes it so he's perfect for a tiered tray. So I'm using premium felt, a piece of muslin or cotton, polyfill, poly pellets, and then I'm going to be using some scrap faux fur. You can use fur, yarn, moss, anything you'd like. And then I'm going to be using both tiny elastics and a needle and some embroidery thread. I'm also going to be using 1/4 inch beads. So I tried to give my muslin an iron here, but I'm going to be using all 3 circles here in this one tutorial, 5, 6, and 7 inch. And for this little tray guy, we're going to use a 6-inch round of any kind. You can use a compass, a lid. This is a Pyrex lid, just in case you have those. All right, so I'm just going to trace that onto my fabric and then cut it out. I am going to speed that up so you don't have to watch. All right, so the easiest way I've found to use the elastics is to get something, a cup. I'm using a mason jar lid and just tuck it down in there before you put in your poly pellets. And that way, A, they won't go anywhere, and B, it's going to be easier to do this. We're just going to grab each side, kind of centering those poly pellets in the middle. We're going to grab each side and bring everything up to a center point, like if you were folding a crab rangoon. And then we're going to take each of those points and bring them into the center before we use a tiny elastic and just tie it off. Now you can use polyfill in the outside of this. Just know that it's going to widen this base. I like this one for tier trays because it's got a really narrow footing. All right, so easiest hat number 1, all you're going to do is use, again, I tell you I'm using scrap felt here, right? So I'm just going to get the width by measuring how wide I need the hat to be by rolling it around the body. That's it. I'm just going to make a little nick in the felt. I'm going to even out the bottom here, which you can technically do later. You don't have to do it right now. And then I'm just going to fold it over and then cut a triangle. That's it. You can leave a little tiny rise, maybe a 1/2 inch at the bottom if you'd like. You don't need to. You can just cut a straight triangle. And now all we're going to do is kind of roll over the felt a little bit so that it kind of has a little memory. And then we're going to add hot glue to the inside here. Excuse me. And then you're just going to roll it over. I find it's easier to roll it over where I'm looking at the glue. And then just press it down. Now you can see I didn't put the hot glue all the way up to the point because I think when you leave that for later, it actually works better. So I'm going to do a little bit further down, not all the way, we're just getting a good base. And then I'm going to add what turns out to be a little too much hot glue. So there's no way I'm putting my fingers into that. I'm going to use a tiny little piece of wood here to squish that all down flat. And now we got to fix the bottom because it's all wonky. All I'm going to do is make sure I have my hat aligned. Cut that piece off. That's it. Like I said, you could do that at the end, but I did it at the beginning and at the end. And then just finish assembling that hat, and your hat for this guy is done. So I had this little piece already cut of 2-inch white fur, and I'm just going to glue it directly to the body. And this is all your choice. You can glue it around the top, you can glue it to the body and kind of fan it out. And then I'm going to take a 1/4 inch wood bead. Now I like to tip the hat backwards. There's no polyfill stuffing in this hat because it's premium felt. So all I'm going to do is get an idea of where that nose should be, and I'm going to go to the fabric backing with my hot glue and then press the bottom of the bead, so the hole, into the beard, and so the top hole is pointing out. We're going to cover that now by just putting hot glue on the inside of our hat and then pressing it, or you're going to line up the the seam to the back and then press it all the way around the bottom here. Now, one thing about the premium felt, you don't have to stuff it. All you have to do is just pop it back out. That's why I like these for tiered trays. You can just stack them all up. But if you are making an ornament, I do recommend stuffing it. So I'll show you that next. Speaking of the ornament, this is the guy we're making. Again, premium felt. And for the body, I'm just going to use some fleece. So I'm going to use my smallest circle. This is a 5-inch circle. Also, if you have colored masking tape from Amazon, that's what it is. We're going to trace and cut it. And now for this one, I personally like the look of this style better. We're going to thread 15 inches of embroidery thread onto a needle, starting from the outside of the fabric, and we're just going to make a running stitch from about 1/2 inch away from the edge. And all the running stitches is in and out, in and out, in and out. Try to make it even and go all the way around. But what happens is when you get to the end, you can see I'm on the inside with the needle side and I have the string on the outside. We have to have both of those on the outside. So you're going to go right next to your where you started and then pull out your needle. So now when we pull this closed, we have a nice little pouch. Now before we pull it closed, we are going to add polyfill and poly beads. Now, if you want a really light ornament, you can skip the poly beads. I don't recommend it. I think ornaments need a little bit of heft, so I would recommend putting in poly beads, then putting in your polyfill, then pulling it tight, double knotting. You can add a little hot glue for security, and then cut off those extra strings. Speaking of strings, you're going to use 20 inches of twine or ribbon or string, and you're going to create 2 knots. So the first is going to be your fail-safe knot, and the second is going to be your actual sized knot. So that is, how long you want it to fall. We're going to double knot that one. So about 1/2 inch away from the very top of an edge. Look, that's not a real like 90-degree edge. That is literally a scrap. All I'm going to do is go to a corner and attach my twine. Then I'm just going to measure and see how wide I need to make this and cut sort of a rounded off triangle again. But I know it's scary to do that. So my glue is actually still wet, so I don't want to fold it that way. Let's fold it the other way. And you can see I'm going to line up these edges, cut a little bit off here because again, scrap piece of felt, right? And then all I'm going to do is see how, like, again, how tall do I want my hat? That is the primary measurement you need. And then this part can all be adjusted. So I wanted a 6-inch drop on my hat. And then all I'm going to do is cut a rounded off bit here. And again, this is only 2 layers. It's not a cone. And then I'm going to fix it in the next step. And by fixing it, I just mean I'm going to size it a little bit differently. So I'm going to glue down this string here so it doesn't go anywhere. And then again, fold over my little bit so my felt has some memory. And then I'm going to just make sure it fits. Easy peasy. Don't need a pattern. All right, so now you can see I'm going to flip it over and I've got way too much felt here, and that's okay. I'm going to first do the top, make sure that's in place, and then roll it over onto the hot glue I just put down. So now look at the bottom. It's all messed up. Don't worry about the bottom. It'll be fine. Now, once it's dry, we're going to flatten out that edge again. I'm going to cut off the excess so I have a nice straight seam in back. And all I did, it's not glued down, I'm just cutting it straight off. Now I'm going to glue it down, right? No pattern is needed. For anything this small, anything with a conical hat, this is super simple. Once you have the body of your item, the hats are simple. So again, I'm just going to make sure I round off that back edge. And then I'm going to stuff this one. I do recommend stuffing the hats just because it kind of makes them a little nicer and a little finished, and especially because people like to squeeze these. So I'm just stuffing a bit of polyfill, rolling it between my hands, and then getting an idea for my beard and my nose. Now for this beard, I'm just using a pre-cut scrap of this Mongolian fur in a frosted gray. I get asked about this fur a lot. You can get it on Amazon like I do. Some of the craft and fabric stores have it, and you can also get it on Etsy. So again, the same thing with the nose. We're splitting the fur to its fabric backing, putting the bead or the whole of the bead directly into the beard, and then we're going to glue both we're going to put glue on the top of the hat, on the body, and on the top of the nose. So you can see when we push everything down, that's where the personality is. So we want to make sure that focal point's in place before we just hot glue the rest of it down. I do pull the hat down a little bit in back so it gives a nice opening to the front. But look, here's our little ornament all ready for decorating. All right, so now we have our ornament and our tray. Next up is our sachet. So I'm going to be using lavender buds because I have them from Amazon, and you can use beads with essential oils or herbs, whatever you have. Just make sure you disclose it if you're selling. Now, I'm going to show you, see these two different weaves of burlap? None of it matters. Yours doesn't have to look like mine because we're going to use a piece of fabric so that all these little pieces do not come out onto people's clothes or in their closet. So all I'm going to do is make sure that I have a nice knit or cotton. Again, I'm using muslin. For the hat, I'm going to use the premium felt as well. I'm going to use a needle and thread and the elastic, and then I'm going to use polyfill and poly pellets. So for this guy, I do recommend the 7-inch round. You can go up to 8 inches as well. And we're just going to cut that, trace it like we did before. Now, for the inside, I'm going to be putting my lavender buds into this muslin and then just tying it up with the elastic because it's not really the important part. If this fails, we still have a second fail safe, but you can add a little bit of string if you are ever worried that this is going to fail. So again, it doesn't have to be big. It's not your finished product. It's just going to hold your herbs or flowers. All right, next up, we're going to do the same thing and trace our 7-inch round onto burlap and cut that out. I am going to be using the thread just because I like the look of it. It's a little bit longer thread, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make that running stitch all the way around, skip to the end, and we can pull it tight. All right, so before we close up this one, I'm going to put polyfill on the outside edge, and I'm going to put just a little bit of poly beads for weight right in the middle before I put my sachet. Now, I promise you, it will still smell even with all this stuff around it, but I think that you need a little bit of weight in this, especially if it's not a hanging sachet. So I just did the same thing as before. I'm going to give the burlap a little bit of trim. And for the hat, any right angle. This is an easy hat. This is if you have an edge of any fabric, you can make it or it can be pre-made like this felt. You're going to fold it over into a cone and flatten it. So you have 3 layers here. This is great when you're building a bigger gnome. And you can see here, I'm going to do the exact same thing. If you're making an ornament, go ahead and put your tie in. If you're not making an ornament, protect your fingers and just roll it over right on the edge. And you want maybe a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch overlay. That's it. Don't need a lot because this one is going to be handled, right? So you want to make sure it's pretty secure. Again, for this one, I do recommend putting in the polyfill in the top of the hat before you place it on the body. All right, and again, by the way, you can sew all of these onto the body. You can sew all of these. Hot glue is just easy and fast. Scrap busting projects should be easy and fast, in my opinion. For this hat, to give it a little bit of rustic charm, I am going to fold up just the front, right where his little nose is going to be. Put a little hot glue there before I measure for my beard. Now, you can see the little teeny tiny scraps I have around in this brown were not big enough for my body, so I'm just going to use a razor blade and cut the fur backing into sort of a lopped off V. You can see no transfer when you cut just the fur backing. All right, so I'm going to glue that directly to the body, straight up. It's going to fan out a little bit in front. Slip on my hat, again with the same thing with the 1/4 inch wood bead, and then glue to the top of the nose, glue to the body, and glue to the hat. We're just going to squish right in place before we attach everything around the sides and the back. And guess what? All of these 3 are now ready for you to decorate any theme, add a tag, whatever you want. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think about this craft? As always, thanks for being here. Please like and subscribe for more crafty fun.